This is Man Cave Gaming and welcome to the Undead Elementalist, a Magcro PVE build. The Undead Elementalist is one of the most sought out support DPS for trial groups. It provides a group with a strong buff to their DPS by providing extra critical damage to each of the elements applied to the enemy. The main aspect of the build is the gear set Elemental Catalyst, farmed out of Stone Garden. Undead Elementalist is one of the builds that would give you more options to apply different elemental effects. So if you want to output crazy amounts of damage while boosting your group's DPS and get that invite to that trial or progression group, stay tuned, I'll show you how. For this build, it is optimal if you play a Dark Elf, and we're going to use the Mundus Thief. For attribute points, we're going to put all 64 in a Magicka. For food, you want to use Ghastly Eyeball. For potions, you want to use Essence of Spell Power. Our monster set is going to be Storm Fist. Not only are you going to gain stamina recovery, but it summons a Thunder Fist that's going to deal shock damage to enemies around it, and when the fist closes, it deals 10k damage to enemies around it as well. Not only that, but it will scale off of your spell damage. Elemental Catalyst, the bread and butter to this build. You will get maximum Magicka increases, critical chance increases, but here's the key. Whenever you deal flame, shock, or frost damage, you will apply the flame, shock, or frost weakness to the enemy for 3 seconds. When this enemy has that elemental weakness on them, they will increase the critical damage taken by 5%. This is huge. We'll also show you a little bit later on in this video how to keep this up as close to 100% as possible to boost not only your damage, but to boost the party's damage as well. Kenra's Wrath, which is a staple to a lot of DPS builds, and with good reason. Adds weapon damage, spell damage, crit chance, and when you keep 5 stacks of Burning Heart on the enemy, it grants you Minor Berserk. And for enemies within 12 meters around you, grants them Minor Berserk, which give them 5% increase in damage. Here is what your setup will look like once everything is put together. 2 pieces in medium, the rest in light. Make sure all your gear you put into divines to increase or enhance the effectiveness of your Thief Mundus. For your CP slottables, you want to go with Backstabber, Master at Arms, Biting Arrow, and Wrathful Strikes. Backstabber is a flex. For the red side, you want to go with Boundless Vitality, Rejuvenation, Fortified, and Slippery. Green is going to be your personal preference. Let's talk about skills. The first skill up is Scalding Rune. This is going to give you some AoE damage, but most importantly, it's going to help proc your elemental weakness for Elemental Catalyst for fire damage. Stalking Blastbones. There's usually good reason for high DPS numbers when it comes to a Necromancer, and that is Stalking Blastbones or just Blastbones. How often are you casting this? Are you being optimal when casting this? That will help you decide how high your DPS will be. Mystic Siphon. Not only does this ability look cool, but it will drain the enemy, causing shock damage around or between you and the enemy, but it's also going to boost your damage by 3%. On top of that, it's going to give you about 1300 Magicka back over 12 seconds, so make sure you always keep this up. Unnerving Boneyard. A great skill that gives you AoE damage, a synergy for your teammates to click on and do damage, but it also gives major breach to the enemy, reducing their physical and spell resistance. Inner Light. This is here for the pure passive. You're not going to use this ability at all. While this is slotted, we're going to get Major Savagery, which is going to increase our spell and critical rating, and it's also going to increase our match Magicka just for having it slotted. Flawless Dawnbreaker. Everyone knows this skill. It's going to deal physical damage and an additional physical damage over 6 seconds, but after activating, this will increase our weapon and spell damage. This is the key reason why we have this slotted. Unstable Wall of Elements. We're using this for a couple of reasons. 1, it grants us AoE damage. 2, It's going to explode at the end and grant more damage, but it's going to knock the enemy off balance, and it allows us to apply the elemental weakness status onto our opponent. Degeneration. Make sure you try to keep this up as much as possible. It's going to grant major brutality, which is going to increase our weapon and spell damage by 20% for 20 seconds. Barbed Trap. Not only is it a good source of bleed damage, it's going to give us minor force. A minor force increases our critical damage by 10%, and it will do this for the duration that Barbed Trap is on the enemy. Mystic Orb. Remember, we are a utility DPS with this build. So not only would it increase your DPS, but it will increase the party's DPS when they're synergized with it, and it also restore magicka and stamina to the ally. Skeletal Arcanist. This is here just purely for DPS reasons. It's going to do damage to the closest enemies that are near you. Shooting Star. I know this is a pain in the butt to get, but it is worth it. It has upfront damage as well as damage over time after it hits the target, but you will gain ultimate depending on how many people you hit with the spell. It is great. Here's a look at what your bar should look like, not in any order, once everything is all set up. And here are your passives that you want to take a look at and grab as many as you can. As you can see here, it is possible to keep your buffs up close to 100% as possible. Rotation and use. You want to pre-buff with Skeletal Arcanist before you engage with the enemies. You want to cast Stalking Blastbones, and then you want to use 2 skills before you need to go back to the front bar to recast Blastbones. This is important. Cast only 2 skills while at attack weaving. Go back to your front bar so you won't lose your front bar buffs. The concept of this build is that you need to apply 3 main elements to the enemy. So you want to ensure Boneyard, Mystic Siphon, Unstable Wall of Elements, and Scalding Rune is up as much as possible. Recast these 3 abilities before they run out. And that's it. I hope you enjoy. If you have any questions, please drop them in the comments below. Please make sure to visit the website mancavegaming.net for a more detailed explanation, and I'll see you next time. Later.